Okay, welcome everybody to the Self-Liberation Project podcast. This is season 3, episode 2. And hey, Christie, how you doing?
Hey Nathan, I'm excited to interview you tonight.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited for it as well. I've got no idea what you're going to ask, so I've got to say I'm a little bit nervous at the same time.
I know it's always the best way though, isn't it? Not
Yeah,
having any questions before.
yeah, I think so. The way I've usually done like content, things like that before, I don't try and put too much preparation into it because I prefer it to sound like just natural and be natural rather than be too scripted. Because I find anytime I've got or I know what I'm going to be talking about, as in like it's more detailed, the more I'm trying to think about what to say next rather than just kind of going with the flow and letting it happen. So, yeah, this should be good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Let's go.
All right, awesome, cool. So just to recap on our last episode, we decided that we were going to do a couple of interviews. So I wanted to interview Christie, particularly around her belief and her faith, which I think went quite well. We're in the process of putting that together at the moment, well, at the time of recording this anyway. And so now we're just going to flip the coin and Christie's going to interview me. And I have no idea what she's going to interview me about or ask me. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, especially that we've known each other since the AIS days, since we were teenagers, but there's still so much we don't know about each other. So it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I forget that we were around teenagers when we met. Because I remember when I first came to Ireland, I was 22 that was in 2005, and I was working at the AAS on the weekends, and I think it was full time for a while as well. Geez, way back then, I can't believe it because it's been over 20 years now. My goodness, I hate to think of it.
Even then, I was an athlete at the Strange for the Sport, if people don't know. And so we briefly touched paths. Even then, it was only hello and little conversations, but it wasn't till years later even that we got to connect and get to know each other better.
Yeah. Do you know what I remember most about you is that I used to work at the residence reception. That's where all the athletes lived. And I wasn't very sporty. So I didn't know anyone there. I didn't know their status. I didn't know their sports. So I kind of learned it over time. And Christie was one of the only people who actually made time to speak to me. There was a couple of others that would say hi and have a bit of a chat. But you were the one who actually kind of stepped out and made time to speak with me and introduce yourself. And I think there was a party we went to once as well where all the athletes were, and you said, hey, you should come along. And so I did. And so I always remember that you were just the one that really just made the time and effort to engage and talk and just learn about me and start up a friendship there where everyone else was there, where everyone was busy. You know, there were athletes, they were doing their thing. They had a schedule to keep. But yeah, I always remember that.
Yeah, no, people have always been important to me. But, listening to you, I was like, good, that's a good entry question because I wanted to start to talk about just so fascinated by people, I suppose, at a young age. And even for you, I was thinking about you and I was like, gosh, you had a great character from a young age. And I suppose we'll get started. And so my first question was, even at a young age, you had great character. And I suppose when I'm looking at people and where they are now in life, in their chosen field, I always go back to their childhood or their upbringing and get to know them from the early days and then build from there. So tell us about your upbringing. You know, your parents still together? Did you have a good childhood? Just tell us about the early days of growing up in Canberra.
Yeah, sure. It's funny. I have to say, when you said you always thought I had good character, at that age, I wasn't very confident in myself in general. So I never would have thought like I had a good character, so to speak. I was quite shy in that respect. But my childhood itself, so I come from Canberra. I grew up in a suburb called Charnwood, which is in Belconnen. That's on the north side of Canberra. And look, it was a pretty normal kind of mid-level upbringing. So my dad, he was like an older dad. So me and my brother were the result of a second marriage. And it was me, my brother, and my mum and dad. And he's an interesting guy. I mean, you've met him. He's a very introvert, very quiet guy. Never really put himself as in his character out there. And I remember there's a lot of traits that from my dad, which I have had before and still have, and that kind of quiet nature. But he was is very, because he's still alive, very intelligent, like a very smart man. Probably sometimes, yeah, probably sometimes too smart for his own good, where he feels like he's always right. But that's another story. But he's a very kind of awkward guy at the same time because I don't think he has a lot of confidence in himself. Like he was born in 1937 and he grew up in post-war Australia. And it was very much that, his dad was the president of the golf club, so he wasn't around very often. He died at a relatively early age of around 50, in his 50s, I believe. I think it was from ulcers, stomach ulcers. And so he grew up in that era in Australia, and he never was really given those tools to be able to, like share his emotions, go for the things he wants, those type of things. And so I had that side of him, and he was really good, but there was just he was also didn't quite know how to be the type of father that a lot of dads could be today, because he didn't have like the best example of a father, because it was that typical 1950s, the dad's out, he's either working, he's at the golf club while mum's at home looking after the kids, and he never really had that connection with his dad. So I can totally understand where he's coming from. But he's a really, really good guy. He's just one of the nicest guys in the world, tells far too many dad jokes which aren't funny, and then repeats the same dad jokes over the years, because anytime he finds someone new, he will repeat the exact same jokes. And then me and my brother Matt and my mum have heard the same joke about 1,000 times up until that point. But he is a really good guy. And my mum's different, and she comes from a like very working class family. I know she didn't grow up with money or anything like that. Either did my dad. In fact, there was times when like mum was probably on the poor side of things. And so she was very much growing up in the 50s and 60s, when it was the same thing. Like her mum would go out, and I think she was a train conductor or a bus conductor. And so her and her brother and her sister were left to their own devices during the day, and they'd be out like just getting into mischief, running around. And it certainly wasn't that level of parenting that you would see these days. And because of that, she's developed quite a strong character in itself. Like my mum is a strong character, even though she like struggles with her own demons, as we all do. But she is like very salt of the earth, very strong character. She's got this thing where it's every time she goes to the cinema, she's always in the movie theater with the people that are on their phone, or they're talking, or they're making noise. And so she's the type of person that will say something to them. It doesn't matter. She doesn't care. She's like, no, I'm going to say something to them. They need to shut the hell up. And so,
I met his mum as well, everyone.
yeah. And one thing I'd say about my mum as well is that she's so good with like buying things and buying gifts. So she'll remember the birthday of a friend's second daughter, for example, and she will always get a present. So she's one of those people that really thinks like that. And she went to secretarial school at a young age. So she can be very organized, and she's very good with that level of her work. And so our upbringing was just very, you could say, middle range, standard upbringing in Canberra in Australia. Like we didn't come from money. We weren't poor. We never went without. We had our fair share of like family dramas, as we all do. And there's a lot more I could say, but it was very standard for, I'd say, that time and growing up in the 80s.
Which is good. And, from what I'm listening, it's healthy. You had a really healthy upbringing, which if and I suppose, in coaching, you would hear a lot of different stories from people. So a healthy upbringing. And then you met your wife. Well, before you got into, did you meet your wife before coaching, or you met your wife and then went into coaching?
It was before coaching. So Amy and I, we've been together almost 20 years now. And so, I know. So it was probably,
young. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, look, we struggled to think about it. It was Amy's birthday just the other day, and it was quite funny. She turned 37, but the day before, she's like, I'm turning 38, because I was like, I just wasn't 100% sure. It's like, I had to look it up, because I know you're turning 37, but when we think about it, like I'm 41, she's 37, and we're like, we met when I was 22 and she was 17.
Amazing.
Yeah,
well
it was.
Done, by the way.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. It was shortly after I was at the AIS. So I think it was a couple of years after that, because at that time I was working like 2 jobs and like 7 days a week. I was really putting myself through the ringer then. And I had that urge to go out and travel. My motivation for traveling was to get out to the big super clubs in the UK and just go see the DJs, which I've been listening to, because I was really into kind of going out and partying, something you can relate to at that age. And it was like, I never had coaching on my mind. I never had personal development. I didn't even know what that was, except for seeing this big tooth guy named Tony Robbins from time to time and being like, well, what's this all about? But I never really got into it. It wasn't until I was 30, and that was after I got back from my first 5 years over here in Ireland, that's when I really started to get into it. And coaching was one of those things that once you start getting into personal development, you inevitably come across like life coaching and that coaching industry. And you see a lot of people out there which are doing it. When I was doing a lot of networking at the time, because I went into a commission only sales job at the time. I wasn't very successful in it, but one of the lessons I learned from it was if I wanted to have any level of success, I need to work on myself. And so that was the start of things that got me into personal development and wanting just more in my life. And coaching, I was doing a lot of networking at the time, like going to networking breakfast, networking events, trying to build up some business. And it was at those events I actually met a lot of coaches. I remember there was one morning in particular that we're having a breakfast. On one of the tables in the networking group, there was like 3 or 4 coaches. So, network groups, you stand up, you give your 40-second elevator pitch, and then you sit down. And there was one time where it was like, hi, I'm Dave. I'm a life coach. The next person was, hi, I'm Jill. I'm a life coach. The next person was, hi, I'm Phil. I'm a business coach. And so we all had a big laugh about that. So it wasn't on my radar until I was at least 30, 31 years old, where I started to learn about coaching and understand that it's a thing.
And was there I've heard a testimony before, but was there a specific moment where you said, because for me, you're sold out, it's your passion, you love it. Was there a specific moment where you decided that this is what you want to do? Because I'm sure you had, like me, many interests or desires or things you wanted to do, but what made you go all out for coaching?
That's a really good question. I wouldn't say there was one pivotal moment. I'd say there was a culmination of things which led me to it. So when I first got into personal development, the drive that got me into it was being unable to manage myself without knowing how much I couldn't manage myself, or that it was possible to be able to be better in some form or another. And that came from, so before that commission-only sales job, I was working at a coffee company as a sales rep. At the time, I was struggling with my own confidence issues. I was struggling with not knowing who I am or what I'm all about. I had my own personal drama going on at the time, and I just couldn't handle things. And there were many times where instead of driving out to see clients, go to cafes and try and sell to them, I was in one of those quiet Canberra streets in my car, literally crying to myself because I didn't know what I was crying about. I just knew I was down and I was really upset. And the moment there was when one day when I actually came home, and instead of actually saying hi to Amy, I went straight into my room and I just started breaking down. And that was one of those moments where you could say it was more like a rock bottom-ish type of moment where I just didn't know what to do. But one of the questions which came out of it, that I was saying to myself or asking myself, it's like, well, is this all there is? Is this what life is all about? Because you hear about it. You hear people talk about their like sob story, so to speak, as I would have thought about it then, about how life is so hard, life is so difficult. The best years of your life are in childhood, which was an interesting belief that my mum used to say to me all the time. And so the question was like, well, is this all there is to it? Is this all there is to life? Is this what my life is going to be like? And the voice in my head came back saying, well, no, actually, there's more, go find it. And I'm kind of paraphrasing, but that's the essence of it. And that was the thing that led me to like, okay, well, I need to get better. So what's the thing that really is causing me the most stress at the moment? It's like, well, I don't have enough money. I was working 2 jobs because I was working part-time at a restaurant as well. It's like, I need to make more money. And so I got some advice like, well, if you want to make more money, just start learning about sales. So I started learning about sales, read some sales books, I signed on some sales courses. And that path led me towards, well, it's not about the sales techniques and all that, because that's all well and good, but you need to have a foundation under it. And that foundation comes from working on yourself. And so the big lesson that came from it is like, well, if I really want to do anything worthwhile, if I want to have a better life in general, I need to be better. And so that led me down to the personal development path of Anthony Robbins and like the basics, and then all those guys from there. And then from there, it's been an ongoing journey to just slowly but surely work on myself and get better. And I think in that 11 years that it's been, I'm at a point now where I'm at quite a level of peace within inside myself. Like I have my moments, of course. I'm certainly not exactly in life where I want to be right now, but it's that ongoing journey. And so during that time, I met a few coaches, but there was one guy in particular, Vaughn, who was my mentor, who really got me into it. So I never would have thought could coach someone, I was sharing a lot of the information that I was learning. So if whatever book I was reading, whatever video I was watching, whatever audio book I was listening to, I was just automatically sharing it with people. It's like what you do. It's almost like when you read the scripture of the Bible, you're like, you have to listen to this. You have to listen to the word. I was doing the same for a lot of people. So I was reading Think and Grow Rich, and if anyone had a problem, I would share this. Like, I just listened to this. I think it might help. Or have you thought about it this way? So I was, in a sense, coaching people on some level, just never in any formal capacity, until I met Vaughan, and he'd been coaching for a good few years. At that point, he is a professional dancer. So he'd spent the last 10 years at that stage, he's with a goal to become a high-level professional dancer, a worldwide, a high-end professional dancer, is probably the best way to put it, elite level. And so he achieved that goal, and he went through a lot of personal growth and development along the way, and he listened to like Bob Proctor and a lot of those guys. And so when I met him, it was at a networking breakfast one morning where he gave like a 10-minute talk. And I was at that stage, I think it was in Think and Grow Rich, where they talk about, if you find someone that is inspiring to you, go speak to them. And so I did that. He was quite inspiring the way he spoke. And I tried to speak to him on the day. I couldn't, but through another friend that I was meeting, I ended up meeting Vaughan. And he kind of took me under his wing, and we started doing a startup in Australia called the Achievement Club at the time. And it was in that moment where Vaughan kind of outlaid everything that we were doing, because I had no idea about any of this stuff. I'd never spoken on camera before, but the next couple of weeks we were recording our first sellable online product that we were doing. So I was doing face to camera, which that's a story in itself. But Vaughan was coaching. He said, look, as part of what we're doing, we're going to be doing coaching, and it's going to be high end, and we're going to be charging as like a 5-figure coaching package, because that's where he was at that level. So I actually went from never coached before, never being paid for coaching before, not going like $50 an hour and then to $100 an hour, and then progressively going up. I went from never doing it before to charging 5 figures for 3 months worth of coaching. So I had this massive learning curve. But prior to that, I had never even considered being a coach until I started to get into like working myself in professional development.
Yeah, that's so interesting you say, because I was listening to you and you said, like, basically to get better as a coach, you really had to look at yourself continually over the years.
Yep.
And also you've got your mentor. So to get into coaching, or to become the coach you have become, what would you say would be the top 3 or top 4 things that were crucial for you to become the coach you are, high level coach that you are today?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So the number one lesson that I've learned, and this has been reinforced over the years in many ways, and a friend of mine quoted it to me once. I can't remember exactly who quoted like that, where the quote comes from, but it's the journey out is the journey in. And that means that if there's anything you want to create in your life, in the external world, then you have to work on yourself first. That has always been the number one thing. It took me a long time to actually realize that and truly understand it. But with any external problem that's out there that you want to solve, you have to look back inside yourself first and understand why it's a problem, because the problem is only created in your head, really. And it's your ability to be able to solve the problem with inside yourself. Then you can actually go out and solve the other problems, or be in a better space to be able to handle problems and challenges when they come. So that's always been like the number one thing for me. The other thing is that it's recognizing that you can change. I think for a lot of people, you really struggle to even come up with the concept of things being different and things being better, whatever that may be. Yeah, and one of the things I learned in my NLP training was that everyone's doing the best they can with the resources that they have available. And so it basically puts a lot of people off the hook, or puts you off the hook for a lot of the things that you see as weaknesses. And it's like, if you're doing the best they can with the resources you have, then it's trying to be a little bit more resourceful. And so if you can understand that things don't have to be as they are, there's ways to change. You just have to be able to take the step up and say, you know what, I'm going to try. I'm at least going to take a step up and figure out how I can become better. That's always been a key as well. And that actually drives into the third one. So the third one would be that you've got to be ready for it. You've got to be ready to be able to take that step forward. I've tried to preach the word, so to speak, to people that just don't want to listen. And testify.
Praise the Lord.
But like, one thing I've really learned is that not everyone's ready. In fact, it's a very small number of people that are truly ready to make change, and they typically have to get to one of two places. They either see something that they want so bad that they have to take a step towards it and figure out how to get it, or things have to become so bad where it forces them outside to make change. And that's typically what happens. Things have to get so bad, that rock bottom stage has to happen for someone to actually be like, all right, well, I need to be different. Otherwise, like they'll end up dead, or they'll end up in a much worse position. And there's been times when I've tried to work with a client, or I was at least explored working with a client, and then they weren't ready for it. There's always an excuse. There's always a reason why they can't do the thing that they want to do. They might come to me and say, look, I want to open up a second location for my business. I want to create a bigger impact. I want to work on myself. Like that's the fluff talk. But when we really start getting down into the deep inner work that needs to happen and the steps that they need to take, there's no action there, and it doesn't happen. And I've done this myself, like over the years. There's a lot of times where I've said I wanted something, but I wasn't prepared to do the deep inner work either. And so that naturally leads to, well, nothing ever changes. So you really have to be ready to make those changes inside yourself, and be honest with yourself to say that, you know what, maybe I'm not ready. I'm not prepared to do the work. And if that's the case, look, that's fine. There's a couple of steps, or there's a couple of things that you need to go through first in order for you to truly be ready. But when you truly are ready, that's when the change really happens. And I notice that with clients. So I could coach people for free as much as I like. Sometimes I choose to, especially when I'm first getting to know someone, because I want people to experience the coaching first. But really, when someone is a full paying client and they're prepared to make that investment, and it's not just the financial investment, it's the time, the energy, the resources, that's when the breakthroughs really happen. That's when the changes really happen. And when you're really prepared to do that, your life changes along the way.
That's so true. Even in our coaching experience, I remember there was some blockages for me, or things where I didn't show up, or I couldn't make it, or I made some excuse. You were like, what's that? What's going on for you there? Or you just asked something, and I was just like, what? Like, it stops you or stops people, and you just have to stop and think about what is going on for you. You're going to ask the question and be real with yourself.
Yeah.
So you were so good at that. But I want to get on to the reality of coaching and working with clients.
Sure.
Because you also said people are doing the best they can with the resources they have. So you obviously must have to have a empathy or compassion for people that you work with, because you must hear so much. I know that in our coaching sessions, I unloaded a lot of personal stuff. So you must hear so much trauma or good stuff, bad stuff, and ugly stuff, pretty much the ugly side of people. So how do you manage and deal with, as a coach, listening to so much traumatic stuff at times and ugly sides of life?
That's a really good question. So I don't know if this is just a part of my natural personality, but I'm really good at not taking that stuff on board. I think that's actually been to my own detriment in life sometimes, because I can be empathetic, but it's not something I would automatically go to, particularly these days, because I see like the strength in people, and I see that a lot of the time it's just an excuse, or it's coming from a victim mentality or something like that. It's not funny, but sometimes I do smile at it, is that, and I say this to most of the people I speak with, particularly for the first time, is when like we'll sit down and I will ask, oh, how can I serve you today, is typically like the first question I'll ask. And most people just go into the problem straight away. It's like, well, this is what's wrong, X, Y, and Z, and they keep going. Most people get emotional. And I say this to almost everyone I speak with, just to let you know, pretty much everyone I speak to cries. And it's usually in the first conversation, because all this stuff starts to come up. But one of the powerful things you can ever do as a coach is just not take that on board and look beyond what you're seeing. I kind of learned this in NLP as well, because when someone's in a highly emotional state, when it's not serving them, one of the worst things you can ever do is like kind of pat them on the back and be like, oh, it's okay, rub their shoulders or whatever it may be, because that re-emphasizes the problem inside them, especially at a physiological level. And so one of the things that I'm really good at is just not taking that on, because when someone could be crying in front of me, but I'm not looking at them saying, oh, poor thing. I'm looking at, how is this negatively affecting them now? Is this an excuse for them not doing something? And this is one of the things which I work with my clients on. It's like helping them realize that this behavior and what's happening right now can be just an excuse. It's like, well, if I allow what's going on inside me, this problem, whatever it may be, lack of confidence, to affect me in such a physiological way where I'm upset, then that's an excuse for me not to achieve. And then that's also an excuse for me to re-emphasize the belief inside myself that I'm not confident or that I'm no good or anything like that. And that's part of the pattern. So it's my job as a coach to help them realize that this is just a pattern, and it doesn't have to be like this. So I know that I'm really good at not taking that on, because I'm looking beyond what I'm seeing and understanding, or trying to understand what the alternative is with a simple reframe. And one of the things that is quite interesting for me and is when someone says, I don't know. So when someone, like, I'll get on a conversation and someone will spend the next hour, 2 hours, 10 hours, if I let them, talking about all the things that's what's wrong with their life and what's not working, because that's so easy to do. We'll just talk about, oh, this is not working and I hate this and I want to be better at this and blah, 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 all these things. And this is just them, like, just talking and talking and talking. And when the real question comes up, okay, what do you actually want? There's crickets. Like, they don't know, because they spend all this time in the negative and thinking about what's not working. They rarely give themselves space to think about what they actually want. And typically when I ask a deep question about, well, what do you want instead? Or where's this coming from? What are you thinking right now? They're like, oh, I don't know. And this is the excuse that we tend to give ourselves. Anytime we say, I don't know, that's me saying, well, I'm not prepared to dig deep enough to find out the answer, because we all have the answers there. And so I deal with those very deep and vulnerable situations when someone's upset, which happens very, very often, even if it's in a business sense and someone's talking about opening up a second location or they want to expand their business. It always comes back to a deep emotional thing there. And so I just know I'm quite good at just not taking that on, because if I take it on, that's going to re-emphasize their feeling. And I'm there to do the opposite. I'm there to give them alternatives and options to put them on a path towards their things and focus on what they want, instead of consistently focusing on the things that aren't working and the things that they don't want.
Yeah, that is so true. You do that. I remember saying, I don't know, too, in our coaching sessions. And, yeah. And it was so good. You really just get caught out, and that's what you want. Because I want to talk about blind spots, and also, let's start with, we're going to go back to blind spots, but let's talk about the most requested thing that people want help with. What do people come to you for the most help with? What's the number one thing that people come and say, I need help with this?
Yeah, John, it's a really good question, because most of the time someone will come because they want more success in their business, because I typically work with leaders. They want to have like more money, more clients, because they're sold that dream of almost like that laptop lifestyle in a way. It's like, well, I want to have the success. I want the house, the car, the money, that type of thing. And this is just very high level. It breaks down differently for everyone. But that's not what they really want, and it's for me to really understand what it is at the individual level. And what's that?
That's true. Sorry, you're right.
Yeah.
Because we want that, but deep down, I find you're right. We want something more than that.
Yeah. And look, and if you're into personal development, you understand it's the reason why you want those things. And it typically comes down to the needs of like love, connection, things like that. And so to give you an example, a good few years ago, I committed to like a 30-day Facebook Live challenge. You know that thing? It's like, I'll do a Facebook Live every 30 days. And there was one lady who got in contact with me after watching one of my videos. I'd never met her before. Maybe we'd be friended on Facebook, or maybe it just popped up in her feed. This is when Facebook actually had better reach on feeds and things like that. But she just sent me a message saying, I watched one of your videos. I have a small business. It's like a hairdresser for kids. She's like, I want to open up a second location, but I'm not quite sure what to do, and I'm kind of afraid to do it. And so I got on a call with her. She ended up being a coaching client over a number of years, where sporadically would do like 3 months of coaching, 3 months of coaching. I just finished with her again at the end of last year. And all that work that we did, she wanted to open up a second location. But when we really started to get into it, it was about what that brings for her. And one of the deep problems inside that she had was like a love, like receiving love from her father. And she had so many different breakthroughs along the way. So the answer to your question is it always starts with something physical, more money, more success in the business. I want to start a business. I want to become a coach. I want to like create a bigger impact in the company I work in or just in my life in general. Like I want to do something worthwhile. And so they will come to me with something like that. But when we start to dig deeper, we find that there's something beyond that, something usually deeper, and that's fueled by those deep seated needs inside himself. But it's like I always say, the problem is not the problem, and the goal is not the goal. So when they've got a problem, that's not the problem. That's just the surface level, and it's up to me to help them dig deeper and find out where the real problem is, so we can solve that, which will solve the other problems. And when they say I want X, Y, or Z, which is the goal, there's another goal behind that goal. So it's understanding, well, what's driving that goal, what's beyond it, and how's that going to affect the problems that they have at the moment.
Yeah, and that brings me to the next question of blind spots. How do people recognize blind spots? I mean, first of all, listening to you, I'm like, well, they need to go to a coach because the coach will doing and bring up blind spots. But how do you, when someone comes to you and you might be able to obviously see something and they can't, obviously you don't say, this is the issue, do this, do that. How do you deal with blind spots? Do you wait for them to be revealed by them through themselves, or do you tell them they're blind spots? Tell us about that, blind spots in general.
Yeah. So one of the things that you do as a coach is you don't tell someone. Like I'm not there I'm there to teach in a way, but I'm not there to tell them what it is. I'm there to help them get the answers and help them with the things that they want to achieve. And so to find the blind spots, I can see them. Sometimes I'll stop and bring it to their awareness and be like, so they will say something along the lines of, well, I've got this goal that I'm working towards, and I know I need to do this. And so I don't feel comfortable making these calls. And so I haven't done it just yet, but I really want to, but I ended up doing this instead. So when someone's talking, I will absolutely interrupt them and stop them. I'm not going to let them finish because I want to bring key points to their awareness. And I'll stop them and say something like, sorry to stop you there, but did you just notice that when you were speaking just then, you disengaged, or you said, I don't feel like I can do it, just very quickly. And that's what people will do. Like they'll be in a conversation, they'll be talking and be like, yeah, like I've got this big goal I want to achieve. I'm really excited about it. I'm not sure if I can achieve it, but I'm working towards it. I'm going to do this. And then it's like, no, well, stop for a sec. It's what you just said there. I don't think I can achieve it. I don't think I can achieve it. Tell me about that, because that is the thing. Like that's that little, like it almost feels like a slip of the tongue, a Freudian slip in a way, but that's the thing right there. And it's out of their awareness that they say it. And so it's up to me to kind of stop them and be like, did you notice that you just said this? Or what I'm hearing right now is just an excuse. Like, oh, I was going to make these calls, or I was going to do this activity, but this happened instead. And I stop them there and say, okay, so do you realize that's an excuse right now? Where's that excuse coming from? And so I stop them during the conversation to bring it to their awareness. And then outside of that, it's asking questions. So as you understand, going through my own coaching, like it's all about questions. I will ask questions. I'll ask quite deep questions as well. And the most important part is for me to shut the hell up and allow them the space and time to be able to come up with the answer. The problem with a lot of people and some other coaches as well is that, particularly if they're green and they're quite new to it, it's giving the person time and space to come up with the answers, no matter how long it takes. There's been times, I think what happened when we were working together as well, is just to sit there and be super uncomfortable in the silence. Or I'd sit there for like 10 minutes. Yeah, because that's where things are happening inside their head. And we have to bite our tongue and resist the urge to say something. Right. Unless it becomes to the point where it's like, oh, I have to say something now. But it's like when you feel like it's been too long in silence, be longer and just sit there and be comfortable. And it's really hard because we're not used to sitting in silence. And it's particularly when we've got insecurity about ourselves, we tend to want to talk more, ask more questions, just fill that silence void. But once we ask a question, time and space has to happen for the person to actually think about it, reflect on it, come up with an answer. And I will sit there. And it happened the other day, actually. I was on a coaching call, and the person I was speaking with, I was just watching them, and I was sitting there in silence. And I asked a question, and I was sitting there, his eyes were going back and forth. So he was accessing all these different parts of his mind. And I could see all that happening. But then I just had to sit there. and I feel uncomfortable, I feel awkward, but I need to give them the space to be able to do it. The only time I will interrupt that is when I'll see someone and they'll be like thinking, then they'll go like, and that's when I've noticed that they've hit a thought, something that's important. And I'll say, what was that thought just then? And that's typically
You
the
do
thought.
that.
Yeah, because I can see it, because I'm kind of watching it. But like, that's the thought that is getting kind of pushed to the side, because we're like, think, what's the answer? Because that's a realization right there. I'm like, cool, what was that just then? It's like, well, I just realized that if I did this, or if I said this to myself, then I'll be able to do X, Y, and Z. And be like, tell me more about that. So it's really just, it's allowing that space and time to happen, and being comfortable being comfortable with the uncomfortable.
And there has to be so much trust for between you and the clients. I'm interested to know how people, if they've never met you, don't know anything, they're meeting for the first time, how they gain that trust with you. Because like you said, in our coaching session as well, when it gets to that point where you know what it is, sometimes it's the courage to say it. I know that some thoughts that I was thinking, I didn't want to say it because I was like, I don't want you to judge me or to think bad of me. One of them was my man-hating one. I remember that one. Gosh, I was just going. And you don't want to speak things. So obviously we've got to trust you to speak out things that we're ashamed of or we don't think is going to put a good light on us. So how do people come to you and get to that place where they can trust you with their deepest, most inner thoughts and issues that they're going through?
Yeah, do you know what? That's a big question. And I don't know if I could answer it. I'll give you my perspective on it, because I've never really had many people at all not get to that level during a conversation. I think a lot of it, like these days, like I put a lot of content out there, so there's that level of kind of surface trust. I do pre-frame a lot of my conversations where I say, look, this is what we're going to do. This is going to get deep. It might get emotional. The only way this is going to be valuable to you is if you're completely open, honest, and transparent with me, because I'm here to help you get the answers that you need. The way I've always done my coaching business is I come from a service first mindset. So I don't do 30-minute taster sessions. I'm not looking to sign up a client straight away. In fact, my focus isn't on getting the next client. It's about serving the person in front of me, which is why I typically spend 2 hours coaching someone in a deep coaching session first, whether they become a client or not. Actually, the majority of the time, after that first 2 hours, the work is done. They don't need anything else. And so I'm not going to spend the next 30 minutes pushing someone into a sale or getting to the sign on for coaching, because if the work is done, I prefer them to remember the coaching session and that have a lasting impact on them, that they may come back in the future or they may not. I'm not too concerned with that. What I really am looking for is people that have an experience of coaching. They loved it. They want more of it. They've gone off and thought about it. They've realized that they can afford it if they want to, whether that be in 6 months, 2 years, whenever it is. That's what I would like. I want people who would like to prefer to come back with me. So yeah, that's probably the best way I could answer it. But it depends on the person as well. Once I start talking to someone, most people are ready. They're ready, because people really have to be ready for that type of work. And if someone has said they've engaged in conversation with me, whether it be through like as a stranger online through LinkedIn or another social media platform, or in conversation, and they've already told me a couple of challenges, and I've just said, would you like some help with that? And they say yes, and they're sitting in like we are now on a call, and they're ready to do some work over the next couple of hours. They're usually ready to go deep, because we've already established that, now's the time for them. And that's how it always has to be with all my coaching clients. It has to be ready. They have to be ready. It has to be the right time for them. And if it's not, then it's not a good start. I need the relationship in place first. I'm not about selling. I'm not about just trying to get them on as the next client. They have to be ready. It's got to be a good fit. It's got to be a win-win for both of us. And if they're truly ready to make a bigger impact, like after that session, and they want to do some further work, that's the only time I'll even bring up the conversation of money and how the program's going to work. But I always focus on service first. And when I'm speaking to someone, they're already there. Like they're already ready to lay all the cards on the table.
Yeah, that's so true. It is about timing. I think your videos that you're doing out in nature are really do make an impact. And I think for someone that doesn't know you, or just being able to see you outside and not so professional, and just what you're doing, I find personally, I thought that was amazing, because then you're starting to get to know you as a person, as a coach, listening to you authentic, and you're so transparent in your videos that you're doing out there in the bush, in nature, in the middle of nowhere. So I'm finding that that's amazing that you're doing that. But what ignited that to come on board? I think people just need more real stuff, and I
Yeah.
found that especially on LinkedIn, I was like, so much professionalism. I just felt like that really connected with me. And so yeah, what brought on that, ignited that to start doing the videos out in nature?
Yeah. Do you know what? That's really interesting. I couldn't exactly pinpoint when it was. I think I was watching some YouTube videos more than anything else. Like, I've always liked hiking. I wouldn't say always, but in the more recent years, getting out into nature and disconnecting from, geez, everything, like all the screens. I think COVID really brought that out once I started to understand how the world works and how distracted we are and how we're just so reliant on all this stuff. There's been a more of a kind of pull towards getting out into nature, and I've always enjoyed hiking as a pastime, like with a couple of friends over here that we do. Because anytime we go hiking, it's me and a couple of friends, and we always have deep conversations. Like, I get pretty sick of surface level conversations really quick. Yeah, so and like, I have enough of those in life in general. So
Yeah.
anytime we go out, we are always talking about a lot of the stuff that you and I talk about. And so I just like being out in nature in the woods. And then I think I started watching some YouTube videos and seeing people doing the same thing. They just go out, they go into the woods, they recording their hiking or their camping. I was getting a little bit more interested in that. And so I was watching some of the videos on like camping stoves and tents and equipment and gear and things like that. And there was one guy, he's got a channel called Rambling On. He's an Irish guy, and I probably connected with him the most, or aligned with him the most in his way of doing it. And he's just an Irish guy, goes out, he's just sits there and talks about what he's doing, a little bit about life, comes home. And I was like, I really like that. So I wouldn't say always, I wanted to do like a hike and an overnight camp in the woods, in the wild by myself, not at a camping ground or anything like that. And so the first proper one I did was like a 15K hike over the Wicklow Mountains, and I found a place to camp. Like, I bought all this gear, I went and did it, I recorded it, and I came back, and like, I just loved it. I love getting out into the wilderness, into just having that peace, getting away from responsibility for a while. And I've noticed my videos are getting a little bit better each time, just understanding like more about shots and what I'm going to do and what I'm going to say. And I just let it flow as much as possible. But I really like it. I just love getting out into nature and just being in the quiet, disconnected world for a while.
Yeah, well, me too. I'm exactly the same. It's wonderful. Let's move on. I just want to talk about, I mean, it's getting on 43 minutes. I don't know how long. How long did you want to
I don't
go
know.
for?
I don't know. As long as we need to. Like, I'd probably have to finish after about 15, 20 minutes, only because it's Saturday and kids and whatnot. So I've got to do some family things.
Okay, I want to talk about this success. So obviously, so many people come to you, and we want to be successful. We want to be better. And so you would have a good idea now of what it takes to be successful. What would you say would be the top three keys to have a successful life?
Yeah, I
Or
think the
find success first, maybe whatever, however, you feel led to answer that.
yeah, well, that was going to be my number one. I think you have to define it first, because there's a lot of influence and pull from the external success that we all strive for, which is the money, the house, the car, and being able to go be free from all the things like a job and stuff like that. But you know what? That doesn't work for everyone. I think defining what success is for you is the first key, because it is different for everyone, and you've got to do what works best for you. I think once you've defined it, then it's just taking the daily steps to make it happen. And so success might be, look, I want more money. I just want to be in a better position financially. It might be, I want to be filthy rich. Or success might be, I just want enough money to get by so I can spend more time with the kids and do more of the things I want. Do you know what I mean? For me personally, like, for me to feel like I wouldn't say to feel like it, but to have that level of success, I want to be coaching full time and recording videos full time. Like having that freedom to be able to coach, camp in the woods, record videos. That's perfect for me, because that'll also give me the time to spend with the family and the freedom to be able to do those things and have the money in the bank to be able to go do those things whenever I want to. So it's defining that success and then taking those steps to make it happen. So what do you need to do every day just to take a step forward, and after that, it's just making sure that you understand that it's a long-term game. It's not an overnight success or anything like that. But if you really want to do something, if you really want to create that level of success in your life, understand that it's going to take time and be good with the fact that it's going to take time. So once you've defined what you're looking for, what success really is, then you can come up with a plan and take a daily step, whether it's read a page from a book that's going to help you get better within yourself, whether it's reach out to a prospect for a business opportunity, whether it's to record a video if that's something you want to do, whatever it is. It's like, understand what you're looking for, take steps every single day to make it happen. And I totally went blank on the last one. What did I say a second ago? I'm going to have to cut this out.
To make it happen. That's okay. We can move on to the next question.
Yeah, we'll move on to the next one. Oh my God, I had a complete memory blank.
I know. I did the same in my podcast. I was like, wait, what was the second part of the question? It happens, right? So much information you want to share.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to talk about transformation. And so what would be the transformations that people can have from coming to getting a coach? So what would be the greatest transformation you've seen in someone through coaching, either with yourself or through someone else?
Yeah, so there's two. So there's two things that the type of breakthroughs and transformations that will typically happen. The first one is always a deep personal breakthrough, whether it's shattering a limiting belief of like, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I could never achieve X, Y, and Z in my life, because these are the things which are typically holding people back. And so the first breakthrough, or the first of many breakthroughs, are typically at a deep personal level like that. Once they're ready to go deeper and explore what's really holding them back. And then once they've actually had that type of breakthrough, an external breakthrough will happen as well. So you'll see this. It's like, I want to have X in my business, but I need to work on myself first, and then I can achieve the goal in my business. And so that could be anything from the goal of opening up a second shop for their hairdresser, or starting a side hustle as a coach or something else, or creating a bigger impact in my business. So once they've had that personal breakthrough, then the external breakthroughs happen, which come from the daily and consistent work after they've started to change within themselves. And so they're probably the two main ones. And what was the follow-up question?
The type of
for myself
that people have, and then the best transformation that you've seen.
Yeah. So I always go back. Well, I've had a couple of clients, but I like going back to Vanessa, she had the hairdresser for kids, because I worked with her for so long and she had so many. But there was one key moment that really stood out, and you'll absolutely love this because it's almost like a divine intervention. And so one of the things that really stood out for her, or that got really uncovered, was feeling like love from her dad, and this came out through a good few sessions, because one of the things was like, she always felt like she wasn't doing enough, or she was like, I need to do more. But it became so relevant in each conversation that I had to stop her and be like, look, you've said this so many times. You realize this is an excuse. What's the purpose of this? What's the purpose of this feeling? And it came out. It's like, she was sitting on her balcony and she was just holding the phone. And it was a very overcast day that day. And it was sitting in the silence. It was getting uncomfortable, and she was really thinking. But then suddenly, like, tears started to come down her eyes, and it was, I want to love, I want to serve more. And it was like a missing love from her dad. And when she had this massive breakthrough and realization what the true driving force or the purpose was behind how she was feeling, the literal clouds opened up behind her and the sun shone through on her. So it was almost like God parted the clouds and the sun was coming down. It was at the exact moment it happened, and it was crazy. And I could even feel the energy. Like, she was in the US and I was over here, but I could feel it. And it was just an incredible moment. But that was one of those deep breakthroughs that enabled her to start taking more proactive decisions and make better choices, setting up her own barriers and boundaries for herself to manage herself in a more effective way, to manage her business, to open up a second location. And in the end, that actually led to her starting her own health and wellness kind of community where she wants to run retreats and events and things like that. So she's actually working towards that now. But that was one of the most profound breakthroughs that I've ever witnessed and I've ever been part of.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, that's fantastic. I want to go into inspirations because when I was listening, I mean, thinking about like my father was an inspiration, like this woman, like, and then, or talking about fathers, and then that can also, impact how we receive love. I mean, there's just so many things there, but it's got me onto your inspiration. Who is your greatest inspiration and why? Because that also can get us behind who you are as a person and
Yeah,
as a coach.
you know what? There's been a couple. This is going to be funny to say, but Batman is one of my inspirations.
Batman, come on.
No, I'm serious. I've even considering getting like a Batman figurine. I don't like buying figurines and stuff like that, but like I read a lot of the Batman comics a good few years ago, like the kind of the darker ones where he was the Dark Knight. But that character himself, and I've played like the games as well. So the Arkham universe games where you actually play as Batman, you fly around the city. They're amazing. But one thing, it's always been inspiring. And I know he's fictional, but his strength of character, his strength of will, his ability to be able to keep getting up, to do what's best for other people. Certainly I don't have that level of discipline or anything like that, but that aspect to the character has always been really inspiring. And I think it's just incredible because considering he's just a man, and I know he's a superhero and everything, but that aspect to that character has always been quite inspiring. There's a coach that I follow at the moment named Rich Litvin, who I really align with. He's very inspiring as well. One of the main reasons was his philosophy or method for like creating clients has been very aligned with what I've done. It's a relationship building. It's just speaking to people, having conversations, and not being pushy with like the sales aspect of things. Outside of that, I couldn't really say I've had anyone who's been super inspiring in that way. I like to learn from as many people as I can. Probably don't learn enough as I go along, but I try not to hold too many people at such a high esteem. I like to learn from them as much as I can, because at the end of the day, like, we're all human beings. There's probably back in the day when I was getting started in personal development, like Anthony Robbins or that were quite inspiring as well. But these days, I'm probably get more inspired by people, like just general people doing their thing that I'm not doing. You know what I mean? And that's why, like, the type of clients I like to work with are people that are beyond where I'm at, and they're doing something which is way more meaningful than what I'm doing, so to speak, or they're creating a bigger impact. That's the type of thing that I really probably get inspired by these days.
Yeah, wonderful. And if we're talking about coaching and someone wants to get involved with coaching with you, Brad, if you did, I don't know if you got a website, do you have a website, or like what's the process, and tell us a bit about that. We'll wrap it up soon anyway, but tell us a bit about how they can get started and jump forth, because maybe some people, there's always that, oh, I should, but I don't know if I should, and I don't want to reach out and all that stuff.
Sure. So just to clarify, do you mean like getting started working with me or getting started as a coach?
No, getting started working with you. What would be the process? Because I know people get scared and to reach out. So you can already like maybe calm someone from having sort of more enticed to reach out.
Yeah, no, I think that's it. It's just, don't be afraid to reach out. I think part of the problem is most people they think they're going to be sold to, and for the most part they are. Like, because pretty much everyone's just trying to sell stuff. I don't have a website. I don't think I've ever really had a website that, because I've just never needed it or never had the time to put into it. But I am on LinkedIn at the moment. That's probably where I'm putting most of the stuff out, so they can connect with me on LinkedIn. They can reach out at info@nathanhawken.com. But really, I think it's just understand that I'm not here to sell coaching. I'm here to serve first. And my first priority is to understand if there's a need or if it's going to be a good conversation if I invite you to it, because I do invitation and referral only. So yes, I put out a lot of content, and that is a way for me to just spread my reach and ideally reach some people that I can work with in the future. But I'm not just going to work with everyone and anyone. I'm quite selective with who I work with. And so I want to invite someone to a conversation. And so I would say that if anyone feels like they want to speak to me, or that a coaching conversation for a couple of hours would be something of value to them, then just take that first step and reach out, send me a message, send me an email. I will absolutely engage. The first thing I'll always do is say, all right, if I feel like I can help you, then let's chat for 10, 15 minutes just so I can ask a couple of questions. And then if I feel like there's space for a conversation after that, as in, yes, this is a good fit, then I will invite to a coaching conversation for a couple of hours. But really, it's just feel free to reach out. I'm not going to sell anything to you unless there's space for it and it feels like it's a good fit.
That is your strength, though, Nathan. And you always have spoken about not being salesy and organic. And like you said, you're not going to coach anyone. You're selective. And you easily probably could have got much more coaching and pushed and got money, but it's never been about that with you. I think that's why I like working with you as well. You're family orientated and it's organic, transparent, honest, and you're just not after this. You're just after the best for people and not after all this material wealth and success and influence, which I love and is fantastic.
Yeah, I try to be. Thanks for saying that, Christie.
Yeah. To finish off, tell us how you want to be remembered, like at the end of your life. What's your legacy? What's like that will bring out what's most important to you to leave behind for your children. What do you want your legacy to be, and how do you want to be known at the end of your life?
Yeah, you know what? I think at a coaching level or a professional level, I think I would like some people or one or two people just say, he made a difference in my life. My life is different because of him, not because of what I did, but because I helped them get what they need, get what they want from inside themselves. And then at a family level, it's just like, I'd love to just be known or have my legacy be like, you know what, I'm a better person because Nathan was my dad, right? Or Nathan was my husband. After that, you know what, I'm not looking for people 10 years, 20 years from now, they're like, oh my God, Nathan Hawken, like he's the best. I'm not interested in that. I think I just need to bring it down on more of a personal level. I just want, if I can make a difference in a few people's lives, then happy days. And if I can significantly increase or enhance my kids' lives and help my wife with her life, then that's perfect for me.
Yeah, but I mean, just already I can tell from this podcast, people, you should be able to tell that he's a family man, honest and professional, highly professional. So thank you so much, Nathan. It's been so good to learn so much more about you, and even coaching, listening to, your whole coaching experience in life, and that it's been so amazing to learn. So thank you for today and just sharing it all.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for asking the question. I don't think I've ever sat down and had a proper interview like this before. I mean, I've had a couple of times where I've been invited to like talk more about personal development and self-improvement and things like that. But yeah, it's actually nice to be on the receiving end of questions for a while. It doesn't happen very often. Yeah, I'm always the one asking the questions.
That's right. It's been amazing. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that like I did, and it's great. And reach out to Nathan if you want some coaching. It's so worth it. I'll be sharing a video soon about my experience coaching with Nathan, which is going to be great.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Christie. It's been good chatting as always. Thanks, guys.
All right. Good night.